Welcome to Show Me Sports Legacies. Tonight, as we begin to tape this episode, we've got women and men's college basketball in full swing with regional district conference championships being determined on the court. Trips to national tournaments and participation in the big dance is on the line. Congratulations to the North Central Missouri basketball men and women's teams for their regional title and district wins last Saturday. The women are a number 11 seed in Joplin. The men are a number 2 seed in Danville, Illinois. Makes for compelling stories, buzzer beaters, and giant slayers. A mixture of blue bloods and plucky mid-majors is must-watch sports in the month of March. March Madness indeed, Chris.
It is in full swing, and it was a great atmosphere to watch the North Central Missouri College men and women advance to the national tournament at the Ketchum Center this past week, and to watch the joy and the community coming together to support their local college team. There's been quite a few great games on that floor at the Ketchum Center, most involving our NCMC Lady Pirates and Pirates in regional or district play, or maybe a big matchup with Kansas City Community College or Penn Valley when it used to be Penn Valley. But that floor has also hosted quite a few big high school games because it has been the home of NCMC Holiday Hoops over the past decade and a decade plus. Maybe is it 15 or 20 years now. One of those games I was able to enjoy in person, and it was one of those games, Jeff, that I think the whole part of North Missouri wanted to see, but just couldn't quite get, between two juggernaut teams and their different classes. And on one night at the Ketchum Center during Holiday Hoops, they came together, and it was the North Mercer Lady Cardinals and the Hamilton Lady Hornets. For a while there in the mid-2010s, both of those teams were loaded. They were stacked with great players, great coaches, great community support, but they never really played each other because they were in different conferences. One was Class 3, one was Class 1. The committee at Holiday Hoops sometimes avoided those types of matchups, but at this juncture, they got it, and they got those teams together. And that gym, I still believe that's the most people I've ever seen in that gym, whether it's for a game or a concert. It was packed to the rafters, and we got to watch one of the great games. And just so happens we have a guest tonight that played in that game. Hey.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
Band-Aids and duct tape.
High budget show. We've got good equipment, but it's not really working for us tonight. I don't know what to say about that.
I don't know anything about technology, so it's not the age difference.
Press the power button. No.
Sierra Michaelis was a 4-year starter and 4-time Missouri All-State basketball player at North Mercer High School from 2010 to 2013. During her high school career, she led her team to a 103-5 record, which is insane. 4 regional titles and 1 third-place state finish. Sierra obliterated all school records and wound up with the second highest scoring record in Missouri girls high school basketball history, 3,710 points, average of 34.35 for all 4 years. That's like Pete Maravich numbers. Sierra chose to go to the University of Missouri and was part of a resurgence in Missouri women's basketball for 2 national championship tournament appearances and first-round wins each year. Finished her career with 1,158 points, 185 three-pointers, 3rd in Missouri history. And now she still lives in Columbia and is doing a lot of interesting things and still connected to basketball. So welcome to Show Me Sports Legacies, Sierra Michaelis.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Appreciate it.
One of the first times I might have run across you, and I don't know if you were the kind that would volunteer when Coach Owens would have youth tournaments to referee.
Yep.
But I had a girls team, like a 5th grade girls team in that, what he called the 2-state tournament, which was like some small school from Iowa was in there. So, and I remember Courtney and Sierra were like rock stars, and my 5th graders, you could hardly play because they were watching the refs.
I'm sure they were really disappointed in my reffing skills.
I don't think I yelled at you or anything. I think I was just good with it. You know, I was always happy for the girls to have a chance to play, and they love to play. So
yeah, that's awesome.
So there was that. So the other time I remember was when you were a 5th grader, and I refereed a game that you played in at Trenton Rotary Basketball Tournament.
Yes.
I think you wiped out Pleasant View R6 that night. And I had just heard about you, and I started to referee the game, and I go, yeah, it's pretty clear that she's the quality out here on the floor, and there was no one else to really challenge you. But that was fun, getting to see you kind of come through all those roles.
Yep.
So talk to me about what it was like to grow up in Mercer and the role basketball played in your early life, because I guess that was a pretty big deal.
Yep. So Mercer is obviously a 1A school, super small. I actually graduated with 12 people in my graduating class. So I grew up with everyone in Mercer and around Mercer, and basketball was the thing. We don't have football. And so we, from a very young age, do this thing called diaper derbies. So it's a night everyone comes to the school, and we just watch preschool all the way up to 6th grade. They split a class into half, and we just scrimmage, and the whole town comes and watches. So yeah, just grew up playing basketball, and my whole family has gone through Mercer, and I have some aunts and uncles that are pretty close in age to me, so I got to watch them and be a water girl for them and wait for my time to put on the Mercer uniform.
I loved, you had a newspaper article I read, and you said that you absolutely hate stoplights because you grew up in a town without stoplights.
Yes. So my freshman year coming to Mizzou, obviously Mercer's so small, we don't have stoplights. We have one stop sign that nobody stops at. And so it was a big adjustment coming from Mercer to Columbia in 2013. I came to summer workouts. So I got here literally a week after I graduated and ran a few stoplights because I wasn't used to it.
So you got to know the campus police
yes.
early on.
Yeah, we became friends.
Okay, so your team was the most prominent your North Mercer team up to that point, even though they had a good tradition in both boys and girls basketball. And Coach Dan Owens and his daughter Courtney, who was, I believe, your second leading scorer on that team.
Yep.
And you guys just grew up together and just rolled the balls out. And
yeah, so Courtney and I grew up together, and Owens was always my coach. And I was actually talking about this the other day. Like, I don't know how good I would have been without him developing me from a very young age. And we had a little team that he started. I was probably a second or third grader, and we were playing 5th grade teams, and we were just getting annihilated summer after summer until we were in 5th grade, and then we were just annihilating all the other 5th grade teams. So yeah, it was obviously a process, and owe a lot of success to Coach Owens.
I always appreciated when we played in his tournaments, he always gave a point to the other team if you fouled, because clearly if you fouled people, they couldn't make free throws mostly.
Right.
And so those games would just be mayhem without some rule like that. And it was always helped things a lot with the young teams.
Yep.
So your first 3 years at North Mercer, you just roll through the HDC.
Yeah.
And you meet this Jefferson team that was tough to get past.
Yeah, the old Mercer Curse. We played Jefferson all 4 years. That was the team that we lost to for 3 years. My freshman year, I could tell you, we were at Northwest Missouri State. We were down 1. I could tell you the exact play Coach Owens drew up. One of my teammates was under the basket, Sydney, and she was to throw it. I was getting 2 screens at the half court. And so I was getting screens, and I was doing a little L cut. And Sydney was supposed to throw it, baseball pass it to me. I caught it exactly like we drew up. I take 1 dribble, and then I shoot a mid-range at the free throw line, like the elbow, and it just went off the front of the rim, and that was the end of our season, my freshman year.
That's hard to take.
Yep, I obviously have not forgotten. So.
You know, when we interview people and we do this podcast, we talk about people and how they came through some of those kind of experiences, and how in some cases it really set them back. In other cases, it kind of gave them fuel for what was to come next.
Oh, mine was for sure fuel. I remember going to the gym 6:30 a.m. the next day at school. My mom worked at the school, so I had keys. Not that anyone could have gotten into the Mercer gym probably, but yeah. So I was in the gym 6:30, and I did the exact same shot and made it. And I just remember throwing the ball as hard as I could at the stage, and then going out and just sitting in the cafeteria. So I was a bit dramatic, but teenage girl.
Well, you didn't play many games that came down to the last shot, first of all.
Yeah.
So that was probably a new circumstance for you. And secondly, people were probably hanging from the rafters. I mean, there was a lot of pressure.
There was a ton of people there. There was a fun environment. Jefferson was always such a good team, and it was a lot of fun. I'm just sad it didn't end up how I wanted it to all 4 years. But
in that fourth year, in your senior year.
Fourth year, they switched the districts. We were playing at, Worth County. Worth County was hosting, and we played Jefferson. And I just remember I think we beat. It wasn't even a close game. I can't remember exactly how much we beat them by, but I just came in with a whole different mindset, and the team could just feel it, the practice and stuff before, and I would have laid my life savings down that we were not going to lose that game. Which in high school, my life savings was not that much, but yeah, I was going to bet that we were not losing that game.
Well, we had earlier one of our podcasts, Ainsley Tolson, I don't know if you remember her from Trenton. We talked about her senior year, and we asked her about the game because Lathrop was kind of their Jefferson in softball, and asked her about her senior year, and she said, I was just calm in that game because I just knew who we were and who we were as seniors and really didn't feel the pressure in that game. Sounds like you kind of had the same feeling going into that game.
Right. I mean, how many times can I lose to Jefferson? I was not going to lose my last time. Because my freshman year, it was 1 point. My sophomore year, it was 1 point. And then my junior year, I think we had to start fouling, so it was like 10 or 11 points. But yeah, that was not the team that I was going to. I would lose to anybody else, but not Jefferson my senior year. So, same situation. It was just because we had I think there was 5 of us seniors that were in my class. So I was like, we were really close too. It was really close. Obviously, we grew up together, but something about just losing to the same team over and over and over again fueled a lot of other people too. Which I remember the game to even get to state my senior year. I was playing like complete crap, and like just other teammates stepped up. So it was huge. Definitely team win, but I do not miss losing to Jefferson.
I think you were quoted after, was that North Andrew, the quarterfinal game that you were talking about?
Yes.
And you said you were annoyed by the double team that they put on you.
Yep. It was like a double, triple team the whole time. But one of my she was a year younger than us, Haley Sample, had an incredible game. So I do remember that game too. I was coming into this interview, I was like, I'm not going to remember anything that they're going to be asking. But
oh, the memories come flooding back. That's why we do it. So I've got to ask you about one of the games I got to watch you play your senior year, because I was on the committee at Holiday Hoops at NCMC. Yeah. And the game everybody, it felt like in North Missouri, wanted to see, but you guys could just never play each other because you didn't play in the same tournaments, weren't in the same district, was the Penny game against the Penny girls. So you guys were perennial great teams. Penny had perennial great girls teams in that stretch run, and that gym that night was unbelievable, at least from my end. Tell me what you thought about that night and how that game went down.
I knew it was going to be huge. Obviously, like I feel like everyone had been talking about us playing. Even like you said, it just never worked out. So it was just kind of like, okay, finally this is happening. My grandpa couldn't even get into that game. It was so packed. My grandpa was listening from the cafeteria. So he got there a little late. But because NCMC has the track too above.
Right,
people were just standing on the track looking down at the court too. It was an incredible environment. It felt like a college game, but I ended up fouling out a weak call, if I might say so. But
I was there. I think I agree with you. Yeah.
Yes, I remember being so frustrated. I came over, and I didn't usually show emotion, but I slapped the bench really hard. And then Coach Owens obviously got on to me. And my cousin Hannah was also the assistant coach my senior year. Loved her. She's taught me so much. She played college basketball too in Maryville and St. Louis. And both of them were just like, hey, you need to be a good teammate right now. Otherwise, the whole team's the wheels are just going to fall off. So, and then my cousin Chantel was playing and hit like 10 free throws. They just kept fouling her for some reason. She was keeping us in the game, but we still ended up losing. So that was, I think it needed to happen too my senior year. It took a lot of the pressure off going into games like Jefferson, the district finals. Like, I think we learn more from loss than we do blowing teams out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So you went to state and you played Tammy.
Yeah, we had a huge post girl with tattoos. I had to guard her. She was really scary. I fouled out that game too.
Well, I'm guessing the whole town of Mercer went to Columbia.
So that is a little bit different. Small towns in North Missouri are all like super close in general. So I feel like most of North Missouri was there in red and white, which was so cool to see. And then we had a lot of friends from Stanberry, and Stanberry boys were also in state. So we would stay and watch them, and Stanberry would stay and watch us. So I feel like we had a ton of people there, and it was a big blessing to play on my last game on the college court that I was going to play my very last game on.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So I've been to the Final Four quite a few times, and I will agree with you there. I've been many times where the North Missouri teams will stay and keep the gym full and root for the other North Missouri team that's there. Even if they were rivals maybe or whatever during the season, if a North Missouri team was playing, you stayed and you cheered the other North Missouri team on, and it seemed to be a common theme, every time I went, especially when North Mercer was there, because you started a tradition because they started going back to the Final Four after you left. You kind of broke the ice, and then teams from there went quite a few times after that.
Yeah, so it was we called it the Mercer Curse, because I feel like teams, I grew up watching, like my cousins and my aunts and stuff playing, they were pretty good teams too, and easily could have gone to state, and we just always lost. The whole Mercer Curse was broken, and then, I think 4 years, exactly 4 years after, the girls went back to state and ended up winning the whole thing, so it was awesome.
Good stuff.
And that was the year that Ainsley's team as sophomores went, so Trenton was in the other bracket. But I remember our game would finish, and I'd walk over to Mizzou Arena to watch the Mercer girls play. Yeah. So that was fun to have two towns.
It was a lot of fun.
That close there.
Yeah, basketball is life for North Missouri.
Absolutely. Now, you had a choice apparently between Mizzou and Nebraska. Talk about that.
Yes.
Recruiting.
I was on the phone. So Nebraska, it's just different. It's so nice. The facilities were incredible. Coaching staff was incredible. Obviously, throughout my time getting recruited, there's a lot of incredible schools and incredible coaches, but just building a relationship with Coach Yori, who was the coach there at the time. And then I actually did not want to go to Mizzou. This is the very last school on my list. And my parents did a great job at saying, like, I'm going to visit. They made me go visit every school. And I grew up doing Show Me State games, and I was in Columbia for all kinds of stuff. So I was just like, I don't want to, it's too close to home, even though Nebraska was also 3 hours away. So poor excuse. But we came to Mizzou, and I remember just meeting the team and the coaching staff. And at the time, we didn't have the best facilities. We had just entered the SEC. NIL wasn't a thing yet. But I just remember feeling at home, and my teammates, my going to be teammates, were just incredible at hosting. And I felt loved and cared for. And I left with that visit, like saying, this is where I want to go. And I still had like 15 other visits. So I was taking all the visits. I went to Nebraska a couple of times. It was also incredible. Also felt super loved. And I was actually on the phone with Nebraska. And it was like a prayerful process. My parents did a great job at not really telling me what they wanted. Just kind of wanted me to figure it out. So I was on the phone in Nebraska getting ready to commit. And before, I was praying that, like, if this isn't where I'm supposed to be, then show me. So I was on the phone. I was almost about to say it, and then Coach P called from the University of Missouri as I'm on the phone with Coach Yori. Then I saw him on the phone. I'm like, oh, Coach Yori, I gotta go. So I hung up on her, and then I called Coach P back and like, hey, we want to offer you a full ride scholarship. I want you at Mizzou. We love your game. Blah blah blah. And so I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'm gonna have to think about it. Playing hard to get. So I didn't call either of them back, but I ended up calling Coach P back the next day and saying that I wanted to play for the Missouri Tigers, and then ended up calling Coach Yori, and that was a much harder conversation, but really respect both of those coaches.
What a sign that you got while you were about to make your decision that she called you at that exact moment, and you took that call. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a cool story, but I'm still, like, my teammates at Mizzou, we still hang out all the time. I was just coaching with Morgan who I played with for 2 years, at Hickman. We had our district championship game last night, so I still see them all the time. A ton of us are still in Columbia, even though we're not from Columbia necessarily, but it's really cool to just still be a part of that kind of family.
You mentioned,
so I made the right choice.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
You mentioned that Morgan was kind of a piece of that confidence that you had, that somebody could come from a 1A school and make their mark at Mizzou.
Yep. So that was another big thing too, is not that I didn't feel like this with Nebraska, but I knew Morgan kind of paved the way for that. So if she can do it, and she's coming from a 1A school as well, I was like, okay, I can. I felt less pressured to perform, I think, with Mo going before me, trailblazing.
Good to have those trailblazers.
Yeah, they're much needed.
And you were that way for so many girls in this area. I mean, just
Thank
to make them dream bigger.
Thank you for saying that.
Dream bigger. Now, what doubts did you have? What were the hurdles to getting more playing time with Coach P? She liked lots of your game, but there were things that probably when you were up 90-30 in a HDC game, you didn't have to play a lot of defense and whatnot. So
freshman year in general is just hard for anybody, whether you're playing a sport or not. And coming from a small town where I was was it kind of, and I knew I didn't play defense. My high school coach told me that my entire life, and my AAU coach out of Des Moines, his name's Jake Sullivan. He's an incredible guy too. He was also telling me that, so I just didn't care because why waste energy on defense when my offensive.
That's what I've always said.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I agree. Yeah, I wish you would have coached me, Chris. No, but so yeah, I knew I didn't play defense. I knew it was going to be an adjustment coming from 1A to the SEC, which is deemed the best college conference for women's basketball. And it was hard. It was a lot of work. Mercer doesn't even have a weight room. Was not lifting weights. I didn't even know what to do, even if I were to have a weight room. So I just lifted hay bales and 5-gallon buckets my entire life growing up on a farm. So yeah, it was a big adjustment from nutrition to classroom sizes to stoplights to basketball. So everything was a bit of a culture shock. It took some adjusting. I sat on the bench most of my freshman year, which sucked. And I had people, there was a lot of people too when I signed that said I wasn't going to get any playing time. Obviously, at 17, 18 years old, you try not to listen and just kind of use it as fuel. But I definitely, obviously, had those doubts too. My freshman year, especially mid-season when I'm still not getting a whole lot of playing time, and I feel like I'm working really hard at it and just wanting to give up. But I would make calls back home all the time, and my family would be like, "No, you're not coming back home. Don't call us again." So it was good. I think just having supportive family and my aunts all the time, I would call them. They're not much older than me. They live in Kansas City, and they're 4 and 6 years older than me. But I would call them all the time, and they would just tell me how not good I am. So that was helpful fuel to my fire. But and then something clicked in the middle of my freshman year, and then I think my first start was Tennessee at home my freshman year, and then I started most of the games after that. So I figured it out.
You kept adding pieces to your game. I mean, that's what I always noticed is you knew how to get to the rim. You were a 3-point shooter. You made a lot of steals. You got a lot of rebounds. You really kind of filled up the score sheet, the stat sheet with a lot of different parts that made Coach P respect that.
Thank you for saying that. That's all I had to do was play defense. I don't know why it took me so long to figure that part out, but
I think that's a natural thing. I have a cousin that went to Illinois State from Lawson, where she was an all-state player, Christy Crowley, and she sat on the bench that first year because she needed to learn how to play the kind of defense that they needed at D1 level. And finally she broke through and didn't look back.
So one of the old adages when you're coaching in coaching circles and you're trying to get your players recruited, you've probably heard this too, is you talk about, this player scores this amount of points, this player gets rebounds, you can't believe. And the question you always get if they're going to especially play D1 is, who are they going to guard? Yeah. Who are they going to guard? Because that's the first thing that D1 coach is going to ask themselves when they recruit you is, can they guard somebody? Because if you can't guard somebody in the SEC, you can't get on the floor. And it's a different mindset because, when you play small class basketball in Missouri, you can fill up the stat sheet and score a bunch of points. But in college, D1, D2, D1, you got to guard, and it makes all the difference.
Yep.
I remember.
It's a whole different
ballgame. I think it was toward the middle of your sophomore year, there was a game at what was the Sprint Center then, T-Mobile now. Yeah. And you played Missouri State, and you guys were just coming into your own, but I think the whole town of Mercer was there as well.
Oh, yes. When my freshman year, the director of basketball operations texted me. She's like, I think our season tickets just went up 318, which is the population sign for Mercer. I was like, that sounds about right. So it's a running joke, but yeah, I would always look up at the stands and always see familiar faces, and it was incredible. So that was another reason I wanted to stay home too and represent my home state, was for Mercer to be able to travel if they wanted to and come watch some games.
Well, you performed. You had 13 points, 10 boards that night, and hit a shot that put your team ahead with 2 or 3 minutes left, but didn't go your way yet. But you had some people show up when you were going into your junior year. That class that showed up as freshmen.
Big help. Yep.
Talk about that.
So Sophie, Sierra Porter, and then Hannah Schutz, who ended up redshirting that year, all came in my junior year. And you could tell the first day of practice it was just different. This team's going to be different. And it took a lot of pressure off of me having to score and run the 2-3. And it was always me and Mo and the 1A guard duo. And then Soph came in and just took it to another level. So I went from like I have to score to more of a role player where it's like, okay, let's do what's best for the team. And I think my junior year too is when, and Coach P says this all the time, but just kind of wanting the team to win more than you wanting your own like glory. So I feel like that's kind of when that clicked for me as well. And I think we're ranked at 1.9, either my junior or senior year. So it was working out, and that was the first year we went to the NCAA tournament too. So that was I've never been on a team closer than my junior and senior year teams.
You guys were 22-10, 13-3 at home. Talk about that home atmosphere and the crowds that started to pick up as you guys were succeeding.
Yeah, so my first couple of games my freshman year, I bet we were getting like 500 to 800 people, and then like average like mid-season games my junior senior year we're getting like 5,000 to 8,000. And then the Tennessee game, the South Carolina game, I just remember that I think it was like 11 to 12,000 people. So the Mizzou Arena was just rocking. And then it was my senior year. South Carolina came in. It was our pink out game. They were ranked number 1, and the place was just full and so much fun. But yeah, Mizzou Arena is such a special place to play. Obviously, we're seeing that still now with the Mizzou team, Mizzou men's team, dominating at home. So you don't just come to Mizzou Arena and win. You gotta work hard. It's a fun atmosphere.
Now, I have a daughter who's about to turn 23 and went to Northwest and did track. Anyway, you guys remind me of each other a little bit. She's kind of a younger version of you and your generation and all that.
Oh, she must be really pretty.
She is really pretty.
That was good.
Excellent. Well, I'm her dad.
You're learning this podcast thing fast.
Yeah.
But once again, you're a good quote, and she's a pretty good quote. So in that game against the Gamecocks, you asked the reporter if they'd seen your celebration dance. You remember that?
I don't remember that.
Okay.
Thankfully.
You said it wasn't great. It needed work, and it wasn't swaggy. And I thought that's something my daughter could have said or would have said.
No one says swaggy anymore. I work with a bunch of high schoolers, and they would completely roast me if they knew I said that. So.
In fact, I think that's the last time it was ever said on national television when you said it. I think you put it to bed.
I remember what you're talking about. I remember seeing the video. It was like a weird white person Dougie is what it was. It was terrible. I hope I never see it again.
Well, the final quote that you had in that article is, "We're not very good dancers. We're better at basketball." So absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Absolutely true. You should see our dance parties in the locker room. It was true.
So you were SEC Co-Player of the Week mid-December of 2016, your senior year, average of 19 points a game, 6 steals, 5 boards. Those are good numbers against SIU, Edwardsville, and Wichita State. That must have been just something amazing.
Yep. So Edwardsville Sophie was hurt that game. So we all kind of were like, okay, we got to step up and stop sitting back so much. She had hurt her lower back, and that was the game. I had 9 steals, I think. So, and that was fun. That was just a fun, obviously, game and environment. And we were playing really well together. And it kind of felt like my Mercer teams were just like, okay, now we know where each other's going to be at, or like we know what each other's going to do. So just meshed really well.
You guys went on a run of 5 straight conference wins in the SEC. That was something that hadn't happened since 1990 for Mizzou, in a different conference, obviously.
Yeah.
And then your senior night, you guys hung 100 on Mississippi.
Yeah. Mississippi, actually, Ole Miss was the game I got 1 technical, my only technical ever against Ole Miss. It was at Ole Miss, so it wasn't my senior night, because that would have been even better. But I was just frustrated and elbowed this girl in her throat. So that was
that'll tend to get you a T in most games.
Yeah, that'll get me an hour with sports psychology.
You're right.
You guys went to the NCAA tournament back-to-back years, junior and senior year, and the ball comes to your hands with like 0.6 of a second left.
Yeah.
So South Florida.
I remember that play too. So we were tied, I think. There was a few seconds left, and there was an out-of-bounds play, and it was just like a back screen for our freshman, Amber Smith, to shoot a layup. And the layup wasn't quite there. My girl went over and helped. So it was kind of like a mid-range jumper in the corner, and I could just see the ball, and I knew it was going to come off. I knew exactly where it was going to come off. And I also looked up. It feels in really slow motion because like this isn't much time at all, but I looked up at the shot clock right above the basket and knew I couldn't come down with it and then go back up. So I would have to just tip it in from the air. But yeah, that was a good way. I love that was my senior year, and that was the NCAA tournament. So it was special. It was fun. And a lot of Mercer people were there. So we were in Florida, and Mercer travels. So we were in Tallahassee playing USF, I think, another Florida team.
Yep.
And then we ended up playing Florida State the next game and just getting annihilated. They had a girl that could dunk it, and I just remember watching her dunk it and warm up. So I'm like, oh, no.
Not on me. Not on me.
Oh, gosh.
New goal for this game. Don't get dunked on.
Yeah. So, yeah. But, yeah, that was special. That was fun. It was a fun tournament.
15-1 at home that year. You guys just owned your home turf.
Yep. It was a lot of fun.
What's your biggest takeaway from all that? You talked about you still have relationships with people. A lot of people are still around Columbia, kind of made it their second home.
So, yeah, just obviously alumni days are pretty much every week, seeing all my friends and stuff. And now they're all having kids and getting married. So just getting to see and hang out and babysit their kids. And we're all just really close-knit still. And that is just the environment and culture that Coach B had. That's the reason I wanted to come. She wasn't there for very long before she started recruiting me. I think like 2 or 3 years. So I was one of her first recruiting classes. And she just kept saying she wants to build something. She wants to build a program. And that's what got me. I was like, I want to be a part of building something. So we just built this culture of family, and that still is very evident today with all of us just being around and being so close still. And then the other thing I think I would say, and Coach P said this all the time, but as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, I'm like, yeah, whatever, just rolling my eyes. But now as an adult and a coach, I find myself saying a lot of the same things Coach P is saying, and they don't sound as dumb when I'm saying it. So if Coach P's listening, please don't be mad at me. But one of the things she said all the time was, right now it's basketball, but later on it's life. So just like we had core values, and it was like falling in love with the process, and just like stuff like that, serving intentionally. And a lot of those core values is what I'm like carrying over to my adult life. And she was really just teaching us how to be women, like good, productive women. So yeah, those are some of the things like I try to instill in any of the girls that I'm coaching as well.
Coach P left the university after this season, and it didn't really end at the peak where she wanted and all that, but 250 career wins. I mean, what's her legacy? I mean, it's the legacy show. Talk about your coach.
Right, yeah. These past seasons can't really reflect on what she has done for the University of Missouri women's basketball. We went to 4 NCAA tournaments in a row, and it sounds easy, especially after you do it for a couple times in a row, but it is one of the hardest things. And just competing in the SEC, and I think NIL has completely changed the game for all sports, not just women's basketball. But yeah, Coach P's legacy is one of that, just being really just great and doing things the right way. So she does an incredible job.
I watched a lot of games on the SEC Network and ESPN Plus and whatnot, and I'm always struck by how the Missouri team has a way that they play, and the announcers always seem to appreciate that the ball moves. There's just a lot of toughness. Sometimes, that would work for 3 quarters, and then that fourth quarter, the athleticism of some of those South Carolinas and other places would kind of take over, but they just presented a solid defensive kind of mindset. Yep.
It's always a defensive plan, and it's always different. It's never the same. Just hours and hours of studying defense, and that was kind of our bread and butter. Was our defense never looked the same.
Did you have any ideas about playing beyond your college years once you finished your eligibility? What did you do?
Yeah, so I went to the combine. It was in Ohio, so I drove there, and I was just there. I went by myself, and I was just like, I'm tired. I've been playing and traveling since 3rd grade for this, and I was just kind of ready for the next stage in life, the next phase, and my knees hurt. I was only like 23, I think, 22, 23, but I was just ready to experience life outside of basketball. I had never had a job before, and my entire life was just sports. So I was ready for something different. So yes, I did explore the option. I could have went overseas, but again, I just wanted to move on.
How impressive is it as you watch Sophie? Now she's going to be playing with Caitlin Clark. Talk about that whole WNBA thing and your teammates and your tie to that and what she's accomplishing.
Soph's really holding her own in the league, and she's just an incredible person and so hardworking and comes from an incredible family. And so I got to go visit her and stay for a week and just see her day in and day out, put in the work, and got to watch some of her games. And it was like her first or second year. She was in the WNBA finals against the Chicago Sky. So there was, again, we're all super close, and I think like 10 to 15 of us went to Chicago, and we all stayed in one hotel room and just hung out and watched Sophie because they played 2 games there. And it was incredible. I can't describe how proud I was of Sophie, and she's just doing an incredible job. I'm so excited that she gets to play for Indiana. She'll be a little bit closer to home too, because I know we all miss her. And she's a homebody. She will miss the sun though. It's going to be cold.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
She says.
Yeah.
She said in an interview you could find her poolside or in the gym. That was her two things.
No,
that's poolside in Indiana.
For as long as I've known Sophie, that has been it. That has been the case.
Okay, so my daughter, who made a connection to reach out to you and through Vivian.
Yeah.
Another thing is that you're good on Instagram. So your posts on Instagram are interesting. I mean, you've got beautiful places you've gone.
Yep.
And some of the pictures just jump off the page, and I'm like, man, she is living the life. I mean, that's.
I love my life. I wouldn't change it. I've always been a big reader, and I got these books when I was little. It was always about a different country, so there was like a Greece one and a Italy one, and all these. And I remember reading these books, and I'm like, I'm gonna go here one day. So as soon as I quit basketball and actually was making money, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go see these places. So it's been a really cool experience. A lot of those have been some mission trips. I work at a church here in town, the Crossing in Colombia, and I've been to Honduras and Jamaica. We go to Jamaica every year. Puerto Rico, I was on a mission trip. But even August, I'll go back to Italy. I love it. It's the Jubilee, so I'm going back to Rome, and then we'll fly over to Turkey and then hang out there for Labor Day weekend and then fly back. So it's cool to see, especially coming from a small town. Not everyone travels. Obviously, everyone has a farm, so you can't just leave your animals.
So you're saying that's different than just driving from Mercer down to Princeton for the weekend?
Yeah, just a little 8-minute drive down the street. My mom's from Princeton, so yeah, there's always been a big rivalry, Mercer and Princeton. So I would avoid Princeton growing up.
So you go the other way, drive the other way.
Yeah, I drive a long way.
Well, I did see one picture of you with a deer during deer hunting season, so you got your bona fides there.
Yeah, so my birthday is over deer season every year, and my brother always asks me what I want for my birthday, and I always tell him to take me deer hunting. My dad would never take me growing up because I can't shut up, so my brother takes me now. So I got it. That was my very first time hunting, and we were out there for probably 10 minutes, and that deer comes over the tree line, jumps the fence, and then there's like a clearing, and then it's another tree line. So I have it in my sights, and it's moving, and it's not stopping. And my brother's like, no, don't shoot it. And I shot it, and it went down. So that was a one and done, because I went out this year and didn't see anything, and I was out there for hours, all day. I was starving.
So better feeling then. I got to ask you, better feeling catch and shoot 3, that's nothing but net, or the deer on the first shot?
I think the deer, because everyone was surprised. Everyone was shocked. But yeah, so I grew up. My dad is a big coon hunter, so that's my preference, because it's at night. You don't have to wake up early. Nocturnal sport. And then so I remember getting a 22 for my birthday. So me and my brother were just always out hunting, but I've never been deer hunting. So that's a recent development.
Now, I listened to an interview where you talked about maybe school wasn't the most important thing of your school experience.
Yes. So you have to maintain a certain GPA, and I feel like I tried harder maintaining than just like doing a good job. Yeah. So I had the exact GPA to play basketball. I was in a Harry Potter class though. That was one of my only A's. So my parents didn't let me read Harry Potter growing up, but I took a Harry Potter class my senior year, and it was awesome. I got to read all the books, so we got to watch the movies.
I am so jealous, because that's one of my favorite series. I've read it, and of course the movies are great, but the books are just unbelievable. So you got to take a Harry Potter class?
Yes. I would have majored in Harry Potter.
Oh my gosh, I can't even believe that. Would be so cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. So talk about, you've taken some other coursework, talk about your getting into coaching, teaching, what you're doing at the Crossing.
Yeah, so I didn't know what I wanted to do after basketball, but I substitute taught first, like August, September, and then a job opened up at West Middle School for PE, and I was like, oh, I'm way overqualified for this. So met with the principal, did the job interview, stayed there at West. I got moved from PE to math, which I wasn't as qualified, but I still was pretty good at algebra. So stayed there for 4 years, and then a job opened up at the Crossing, where I was leading a small group, and they offered me the high school position. So I'm the high school co-director, and I've been there. This will be 2025. January 2025 was beginning my 4th year with the church. So I've been out of school for a while, but it doesn't feel like that long. I turned 30 last year, so my knees are starting to hurt.
Well,
yeah.
I long for those days of 30. That was when I lost some of my speed, but I could still play all the sports.
I'm excited. So, I hear it's the best years of your life, so I'm looking forward to it.
I would tell you the same. I enjoyed that. Chris and I used to play old man's basketball. It was sort of a plodding style of basketball, but we both loved to shoot from deep, and so it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun for years. Now, talk about working with high school age girls. What are some of the challenges with social media and just general what path they should be on for 14 to 18-year-olds, and talk about your work with that?
Yeah, so I say this all the time, but I don't think it's ever been harder to be a teenager. I just don't remember having as much pressure to perform as they do, and I think social media has a lot to do with that. But yeah, it's hard to be them, and just getting to hang out with them and minister to them has been, this is probably my dream job. I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but it's not always easy. Like within ministry, especially a big ministry like Crossing students at church, is just you're dealing with hard things like suicides or just loss and eating disorders, just all the things that come along with being a teenager. And just getting to walk alongside them has been a blessing for me, and just challenging, but also really rewarding.
I recall, obviously, we had a loss. My wife passed away when my daughter turned 16 years old, and she was part of that basketball team, and they really looked out for her, and they really took care of her. And then another member of that team went through a loss of a parent later, and the same thing occurred. People that aren't engaged in those kind of things sometimes don't have those close relationships where they can work their way through that stuff.
Right. I don't know how people do it without community, and I think that's kind of just like something that's built into a team sport like basketball. And just even like small groups too, or just kind of like teams. But yeah, we've seen a lot of people just like step up for a lot of different kids too within the ministry. But it's always a blessing to have community, especially your peers.
Talk about this Called to Be event that I presume you are in charge of.
Yeah. So I've been wanting to do this conference since 2022, so almost 3 years. And it just was never a good time. It was never the right time. But it's always been in the back of my mind. And I kind of got the green light in the fall. I think it was like November last year, so 2024. And everything is just fallen into place. And so I know it's a God thing, but I have 2 incredible speakers coming that have no business coming to a conference that doesn't even exist yet. Brenda Blaine, she wrote one of my favorite books that I read in 2024. It's called Can I Say That? It's more of a memoir, but giving her testimony. And then Lacey Abercrombie is from Dallas, Texas, and also has an incredible story. And I don't have TikTok. I'm not that cool, but a lot of the teenagers know who she is. I guess she's famous on TikTok, but is also a little bit serious. So they're both coming in. And then right now we have a breakout. We have 2 different breakout session options. One will be a panel, which is kind of a Q&A for the teenagers to maybe get involved and ask some hard questions to some pastors and like-minded people. And then we have a live podcast as the other breakout session. So it's going to be a full day of just worship and ministry. And I'm really looking forward to it.
And this is on April 5th?
April 5th, 2025. We have an Instagram too. I think it's Called to Be Co on Instagram. And then you can register and sign up and check it out from there.
It sounds like an outstanding idea and event.
Thank you.
Glad you got green lighted on that. And I'm anxious to see how that all flows and what kind of crowd you can draw in, because it seems to me,
you guys updated.
It seems to me like, we see things at the pro level, with the WNBA or with the explosion of women's sports, and in Kansas City with the soccer stadium and this and that and the other. But it's got to come down and scoop up those kids that are teenagers. They got to feel part of that empowerment and that success.
Yeah, and just coming from a small town, not having a lot of opportunities like this. We had a small group called Act Teens growing up, but other than that, I didn't have a small group or people pouring into me on a spiritual level. So it's been cool to see. It's been an adjustment, like kind of navigating how to learn how to do that, how to be a good mentor, because I obviously don't know what I'm doing, but by the grace of God,
Every person that we talk to on this podcast that has gone on to great success says, I didn't really know what I was doing those first couple of
Okay,
years.
well, that's good. That's good. At least amongst other people.
But the key is you got to dive in. If you've got a passion for it, you just got to go and figure it out as you go. And it sounds like you learned a lot of this importance of small groups from being a basketball player, whether it was at North Mercer or at Mizzou. And you've carried a lot of those values with you now, and you get to pass them along. And as you get older and you join our club, which is not the 30 Club, but I don't have TikTok either, but I know the importance of getting things passed along to you, and these legacies are more about X's and O's. They're about life lessons and what can you pass along to the next generation. And you have certainly got the torch and are ready to pass that along.
Yes, I'm excited. And honored to be in this position to even do so. Humbling. It's been humbling.
Yeah, it's
definitely been humbling.
It's impressive. You just seem to have a joy about life, and that kind of emanates from you. And
thank you for saying that.
I just really appreciate it. Now, before we let you go, okay, you mentioned that your grandma would be excited.
Oh my gosh,
you got any messages for grandma?
Yes. Shout out to my grandma Debbie. I know you said all of my stats at the beginning of this podcast, and I promise you she was going to double check your work, and your research.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Every single stat that I've ever had, whether basketball, softball, track, anything, pickleball, it's in her phone notes. So she is a big fan, and surprisingly, she has other grandkids. But I feel like she makes it pretty obvious I'm her favorite. So shout out to my grandma Debbie.
I love it. Chris, you got anything to add? Anything you want to say, Sierra, before we drop off here? We appreciate your time. I appreciate your willingness to talk to us, and would love to just kind of keep track of how you're making your way through the world.
Yes, sir.
In your 30s. Yes. Oh, my goodness.
And I just want to say thank you for never playing one of my teams while I was coaching. That's what I really want to thank you for, is that I didn't have to coach against you.
Okay, well, you're welcome. That was probably more Coach Owen's thing. So.
Yeah, maybe.
But I appreciate you guys asking me to come on this podcast and for being so flexible with the time.
Excellent. Really want to thank Sierra Michaelis for her time to talk to us on the podcast about her legendary career at North Mercer High School, and then becoming a foundation piece for Coach Pingeton and the Missouri Tigers basketball program as it grew and became a force in the SEC during her time, and to find out what she's been doing as a young adult and how she is spreading her wings and making some things happen down there in Columbia. Really enjoyed that, Chris.
Yeah, and if we've learned anything in the past few podcasts, it's this reoccurring theme we're starting to have about reading books when you're younger. So this is not the first time one of our podcasts has had a guest say, reading books when I was younger really had an influence on who I became and how it happened. So kids out there, read when you're younger, and not just sports stuff, but all stuff. And that's my plug for reading, I guess, for the day.
And I kind of like that idea of that Harry Potter class. That sounds.
I'm taking that. I might go home tonight and search online how I can take that class.
Do that as a pass-fail. I think you can handle it.
I can do it.
Once again, thank you to Sierra Michaelis. Thank you for joining us here on Show Me Sports Legacies.